Hello, welcome back to I Create For You. My name is Lori. We're going to be doing a story in the Civil War Stories, Ghost Stories book. And today's story is Ghosts of Shiloh. The Union campaign in the West began in earnest in February 1862, when a largely unknown commander, Brigadier General Ulysses S. Grant, captured the Confederate strongholds of Fort Henry and Fort Donelson, which guarded against an advance down the Cumberland and Tennessee rivers, southward past the Tennessee state line. This meant that Tennessee lay wide open to attack, so the Confederates were forced to retreat south out of Kentucky and even to give up Nashville, Tennessee. They regrouped in Corinth, Mississippi. Meanwhile, a newly promoted Grant transported his 40,000-strong army down the Tennessee River to Pittsburgh Landing, some 15 miles northeast of Corinth, where he hoped to join forces with another Union army of 55,000 men that was then in Nashville. Unfortunately for Grant, the Confederate commander Albert S. Johnston mobilized his army before Buell's Union army could reach the Tennessee River. And on April 6, 1862, he launched an all-out assault on Grant's forward divisions encamped near Shiloh Church. The Union line was forced back in disorder, but the confused fighting in the woods left the Confederates as disoriented as their retreating enemy. This confusion was increased when Johnston was killed, and dogged groups of Union defenders were able to regroup and hold on in a position that became known as the Hornet's Nest, protected by a sunken road that was turned into a makeshift trench by defenders. Eventually, the Confederates forced the Union troops back from the sunken road and the nearby peach orchard, and as darkness fell, Grant's line had been thrown back almost to Pittsburgh Landing, with its back to the river. Disaster was only averted by the fire support of Union gunboats on the Tennessee River and by the fall of darkness. During the night, General Buell's 55,000 reinforcements began to arrive. The following morning, the Confederates planned to renew the attack, but it was the reinvigorated Union army that struck first. It outnumbered the battered Confederate army by 2-1, and the outcome of the second phase was never in doubt. By early afternoon, the Confederate Army of the Mississippi was in full retreat, leaving almost 10,000 of its men behind as casualties, either killed, wounded, or missing. Although Grant's army suffered a similar number of casualties, they held the field and managed to unite their two armies on the Mississippi border. One of the most commonly reported ghost stories concerning the battle is that of the Phantom Drummer, whose drumming can still be heard in the vicinity of Shiloh Church, around the anniversary of the battle. Visitors have complimented the park rangers on providing such an atmospheric backdrop for the battlefield tours, only to be told that no drummer was hired. Unlike many reported ghosts, that of the Phantom Drummer remains invisible, and only his persistent and melancholy beating can be heard. According to tradition, the drummer was a mere boy, serving in a Union regiment attached to Don Carlos Buell's army, which force marched to the Tennessee River to save Grant's troops from destruction. The drummer's regiment took part in the Union assault on the second day of the fighting, and as the story goes, the troops soon came under extremely heavy fire from a well-defended Confederate position. The colonel ordered the drummer to sound the retreat, but after a pause, the boy began beating the signal for the attack. When the officer rounded on the boy, he was told, "But sir, attack is all I know. I never learned retreat." The boy's lack of training resulted in his regiment rising up and charging the enemy, and after a short but hard-fought struggle, they broke the Confederate line. Afterwards, they found the dead body of the drummer boy, shot through the heart in the closing minutes of the fight. It would be all too easy to dismiss this melodramatic story for fiction, or at least see it as an apocryphal story conjured up to summarize the battle that day. However, in the late 1940s, a new road was being built through the battlefield, and the construction team unearthed several bodies, one of which was that of a young drummer boy, aged about 14, with traces of his drum cord still looped around his neck. A bullet lay in his chest cavity where his heart would have been. Other sounds that have been heard in various parts of the battlefield are those of men marching close to Pittsburgh Landing, or the sounds of wounded men crying out for help or water near the Shiloh Church, and a few visitors have expressed their unease and a feeling of intense cold while walking around the hornet's nest. Like the battlefields in the East, these sounds or feelings tend to be experienced in places where the fighting was most intense. The discovery of unmarked graves during the road construction would have come as little surprise to the park rangers at Shiloh National Battlefield Park, as the confused nature of the terrain, with its dense wood thickets and small ravines, meant that many bodies were missed by the burial parties and were either buried where they lay some time later, or else remained unburied until the bodies decayed sufficiently to blend in with the forest floor. According to one park ranger, the dispersed bodies also meant that Civil War artifacts were scattered across the battlefield, and so were relatively easy prey to grave robbers equipped with metal detectors. These men would turn up at night and scour some of the remote corners of Shiloh's battlefield, hoping to find a contact that might turn out to be a valuable belt buckle, a row of buttons, or a bayonet. One man in particular was reputed to have visited the battlefield at night over the space of several years, and he proved particularly adept at finding objects to sell to unscrupulous collectors. The park rangers never managed to catch him with looted artifacts or digging up an unmarked gravesite. One night, park rangers were patrolling through the woods to the northwest of the Shiloh Church when they found a metal detector lying on the ground, brand new but accidentally broken. A little farther on, where a track wound through the trees, they came upon a car with the owner of the metal detector sitting inside it. When the rangers approached, they found he was paralyzed by fear and seemed to have experienced some kind of severe trauma. He was taken to the Corinth Hospital, where he was treated and then released into psychiatric care. He never fully recovered and never spoke of what happened to him that night in the woods. The rumors soon spread, the most persistent one being that he had been digging in a spot his detector suggested a metal artifact might be when he unearthed a row of buttons from a soldier's tunic. As he knelt down to pick them up, a skeletal hand rose from the earth and grabbed them back again. While this is pretty far-fetched, something or someone did make the grave robber lose his sanity in the Shiloh woods. The park rangers never found any signs of a disturbed gravesite when they inspected the area the following day. He had disturbed the resting place of the ghost of a fallen soldier, and the specter turned on him, or was there more rational explanation? While the true facts may never be known, the story of the man's encounter certainly deterred other metal detector owners from following in the man's footsteps. Possibly the ghosts of Shiloh were indeed successful in protecting their own graves. Before leaving Shiloh, it is worth recounting the story of Mrs. Ann Wallace, the wife of one of Grant's divisional commanders, Brigadier General William H. L. Wallace, not to be confused with the fellow divisional commander, Brigadier General Lew Wallace, who later wrote Ben-Hur. Wallace had posted his troops between Shiloh Church and the Tennessee River, which put his men in the front line when the Confederates launched their attack. It was his men who defended the Peach Orchard and the Sunken Road, and who created the defensive position known as the Hornet's Nest. When the Union line finally broke, the Confederates poured through the defenses, and as Wallace tried to rally his men, he was shot in the left eye by a musket ball and fell from his horse. The fire was too heavy for his staff to retrieve the body, so he left behind so he was left behind when his men fled the field. Meanwhile, his wife Anne was approaching Pittsburgh Landing. Pittsburgh Landing, having left her home in Ottawa, Illinois, a week before. Since her husband had marched away, she had been overcome by a feeling of foreboding and impending doom. By the last day in March, it had become overwhelming, so she decided to visit her husband. She took passage by riverboat down the Illinois and Mississippi rivers to Cairo, Illinois, then joined an Illinois civilian delegation for the passage up the Tennessee to Pittsburgh Landing. She arrived as the first day of the battle was at its height, probably around the same time her husband was shot. She spent the night on the eastern bank with General Buell's staff, then crossed the following morning to tend the wounded as the army counterattacked. The Union troops recovered the ground where Wallace had fallen, and they found her husband wrapped in a blanket supplied by a well-meaning Confederate soldier. He was extremely weak and sodden with the night's rain, but still alive. The soldiers carried him to a hospital boat on the river, where his wife joined him. She later said, "Will recognized my voice right off and clasped my hand. I had believed him dead, and he was alive, and he knows me." It was a moving reunion, but it was short-lived. Wallace was taken to Grant's headquarters in Savannah, Tennessee, where his wife kept a vigil at her husband's bedside. However, his wound soon became infected, and his wife put it, as his wife put it, he faded away like a fire going out. His last words to his wife were to his wife, waving her away when she seemed ready to weep with the words, "We meet in heaven." Wallace died on April 10th. His wife took his body home and buried him in Ottawa, where to honor his memory, she commissioned a rather bizarre and macabre scene with the general's horse, a national flag, and the general's portrait arranged outside the porch of the family home. According to the story, you can still see the figure of Anne Wallace standing by the window of the Cherry House where her husband died, while another account tells of the ghost of a man looking out from an upstairs bedroom window. The figure is reportedly dressed in broad-brimmed black hat, but wears the uniform of a Union general. Are these the ghosts of the Wallaces, or did some other unrecorded trauma take place in the same house? If the story of Anne Wallace's prescient feelings in Ottawa about her husband's fate were not strong enough, the possibility that her ghost still remains by her husband's side goes much further into the realms of the unknown and unprovable. I'm hoping you guys got to see some of these pictures in this book. I guess those are some of the artifacts that have been found by metal detectors. This is the scenes. This one was by the sunken road. And this is Albert Johnson. And this is the bullet splintered stump of a tree, it says, and one of their cannons. All right. Well, there were several ghosts in this one. I only went to the very end like I normally do and try to catch some stuff at the end of the story. So I did catch the husband and wife. So that's who I'm going to try to illustrate. Although the story of the drummer was very, very interesting, to say the least, that they thought it wasn't true, but later found the body of a 14-year-old boy. And also the hand reaching up to retrieve whatever the metal detector had found in the buttons that the metal detector had found in the ground. Okay, I'm going to try to do them in their windows looking out of their house, the house that General Wallace had passed away in. So I'm going to try my best to bring you guys down to the page like I usually do. And we'll try to depict this the best that we can. I'm going to draw just draw somewhat of a house frame, or at least she's going to be, I'll just put like a door over this way. I want to make sure I'm in frame when I'm doing this. Okay. And so he's on the second floor. This is the bottom floor. So I'm just going to make a window here. If you've been here before, I tend to sketch very lightly, so I'm going to try this year to do it a little darker so you can see what I'm sketching. I'm going to try the best that I can. Now it looks like my pencil is ready to come right out of the pencil. Of course it is, right? Usually happens that way. But we're going to trudge through it and hopefully we'll make it. Okay, get these windows drawn up here. Oh, there went my lid. Okay, let me see if I can get myself another pencil real quick, because my pencil sharpeners don't seem to be working that well. Oh, okay, I'll get my little nubby pencil. How's that look? Okay, get rid of this. Get this one. And we'll work on the second one. Down here is where Alice would be. And General Wallace will be looking out at the top. And I'm going to make him look a little creepy, of course, because that's what I do, right? Okay. I'm going to draw her in the window. Let's see. How can I do this that it looks kind of like what it's supposed to look like? I will make this door bigger just to make, because I'm going to be making these figures in the window rather big. So I want to make sure that they fit. You know what I mean? Like, it won't look so bad. It won't look like they're bigger than the door or whatever. So she's going to be looking out of the window. So I'm going to get her in here and just have her looking out this window. I don't know really what she looks like, but we're going to have it look a little spooky with her hair here and her neck. And I'm going to have add a little more spookiness. I'm going to add her hand here. Best that I can. And then we'll come up this side. And I'm going to do another arm a little higher. She's looking out the window. I don't know what she's looking for. If her husband is up on the second floor, I guess she doesn't realize it, or she's just looking out the window. Who knows? They didn't say what she died of or anything like that, so that's one thing we don't know. There she is, looking at the bottom window. And then we'll make General Wallace up here. And we'll make him back a little further. Well, yeah, I could probably still do him a little bit like I did her. And they said he was in a hat, so we'll make a big brim hat. That's what they said he was wearing, so we'll do that. Remember, these are entities where you don't really get to see what, you know, the features aren't as dominant because they don't really say too much about that. And I'm just going to put his hand out like this, where it looks like he's going off a little bit there. But same kind of silhouette as his wife, more or less, but he's more in a soldier's outfit, so to speak. So I'm just going to do the outlines, and I'm not going to do his second hand up. I'll just do it like this. And then we get our handy dandy blender, and we kind of make it go out and about, so it's a little bit hazier and mistier looking and more ghostly, because you can't really have it looking too detailed. So I'll do hers also. She's looking out. Gotta get her to look a little hazy also here. So we have her looking out the bottom, and he's looking out of the top. They're not really perfect per se, but I'm going to try to get a little bit of their eyes sunken in there a little bit. Them looking out the window of their home. And unfortunately, you know, she got there in time to see her husband killed, but I shouldn't say unfortunately. She was fortunate enough to have the foreboding feeling to let her be there by her husband's side when he passed. There they are looking out the windows. Not the best picture, but it still is somewhat of an illustration of what they would have looked like living their eternal life together still, but in the other realm. So, thank you so much for sticking by, listening to the story. Hope you like these stories so far. They're very interesting, and it seems each one seems to have multiple ghost sightings within each story itself. So, I will try to do multiple if I can. If I can't, it all depends on how they're depicted, how they're seen, what the circumstances are, and my time frame with my stinky little phone, and what its attitude is during the day, and it allows me how many minutes it's going to allow me to do. So thank you so much for stopping by. Please give me a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't, comment if you'd like to. Let me know if you know of any other books similar to this one, because these are pretty interesting. Please stay warm, stay healthy, stay cool if you're in a warm place, stay warm if you're in a cold place. Stay positive, stay, I think I said happy and healthy already, but you can never have too much happiness and healthiness, right? And I shall see you in the next video, which will be on Monday. We're going to do another one of these stories and illustrations, and you should check out my shorts too, because they're motivational, inspirational, and hopefully they encourage you and help you in some way, shape, or form. They're the black and white series, white on black series that I have. Yes, and I hope you have a great weekend. Thank you so much. Bye-bye for now.